All right, this video is going to be a hard one for me to go through. I want to share this experience with you because I want you guys to be able to learn from it. I'm going to try to make it as lighthearted as I can, but I seriously almost died. You're gonna have to excuse my voice. I feel like I'm getting a little bit under the weather. I blame my children and going to school and bringing things back. But first thing I want to do is talk about where this happened. So I am based out of Deer Valley Airport, and a common place for me to be able to fly to is Payson, Arizona. They've got great pies, great food. It's a wonderful $100 hamburger. Well, $300 hamburger. But I fly there regularly, so I'm very familiar with the airport and how it operates. So things that are unique to this airport is that the runway itself actually comes down and dips inside of the middle. And that is going to play a big factor into this story because when you're flying up there, it's altitude, and then you add a little bit of heat, you got density altitude. So when you're taking off, you start climbing out, almost feels like you're climbing with the terrain, like you're not gaining altitude. It gives you this optical illusion, and so that was something that I was expecting that day. With that in mind, let's get into the story. So it was a Monday, my kids didn't have school because of some holiday, and so we decided to all climb into the airplane and go there for breakfast. I hadn't taken all my kids there, and it was gonna be my first time my son had ever gone to Payson. I had taken my daughters there before when they didn't have school and stuff. But everyone was super excited. Climb into the airplane, double check everything, make sure the weather's gonna be great, make sure we have the right amount of fuel, that we're not gonna be overweight, and that everything's gonna perform properly when we need to take off at Payson. All the numbers were looking good, so we decided to depart the airport. It was a great flight out there. Nice, it was smooth, the kids were having a good time. We took some great pictures, which I'm very happy that I have. It was awesome. But after we got over the main ridge between here and Payson, there was a couple of bumps. And as expected, between a main mountain ridge and two valleys, you can have different weather. The weather report from Payson was actually reporting calm winds. So in that situation at Payson, they want you to use runway 24. And so we were coming from the southwest, and so we decided to go a little bit north and come around the airport to make a right-hand traffic for runway 24. Everything is going great. Everything is feeling right. The approach is perfect. We have an airplane going by. This is an active airport after all. And at about 50 to 100 feet off the ground, something changes. All of a sudden the airplane goes like this. You know, I'm doing what I can to bring it back, and the airplane is just all over the place. I don't know if I'm overcorrecting. Things were a little crazy, and finally, you know, I decided, okay, we're doing a go around. We're not messing with this. And I looked down at the windsock, and I'm like, oh, well, that's why. Everything had changed from a regular landing. We're suddenly gusting with a quartering tailwind, which explains all of that. Okay, cool. We're doing our go around, and we're flying down the runway, and you know, density altitude, that shape of the runway, everything is seeming right, and I'm watching the ground, and I feel like I'm actually getting closer to the ground, and my brain says, okay, this is that optical illusion. It happens every time we're out here, and this airplane actually has a little less performance than the 172 because I was flying a Cherokee 140 with a 160 horse upgrade, and so I'm like, okay. Numbers were fine, everything was fine, so this should be fine. And continuing to fly, and we're starting to get towards the end of the runway. And that's when I realize we're not climbing. And I look around and like, I don't know what's going on, and the stall warning horn starts going off. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm pulling back. And so I put nose over, which is counterintuitive because that terrain in front of me is coming up. And I start doing flows and doing checks, and I'm looking everywhere trying to figure out what's going on. And the stall warning horn goes off again. I'm like, oh crap. And I push down and I look out, and I'm like, we're even closer to the ground. And crap, and I keep doing this over and over again. I'm looking, I'm constantly like, what is going on? Why aren't we climbing? Checking the magnetos key switch, checking the circuit breaker, checking everything that I possibly can. And all the meanwhile, I keep looking ahead and we're getting closer and closer to the ground. Out at the end of this runway is nothing but trees and an airport community. And I'm like, there are no places to land. I can't see anything except treetops and rooftops. And I'm getting very concerned, very nervous. I'm freaking out inside. And the stall warning horn keeps going off and nosing over again. And it's just like, what is going on? I finally realized that I forgot to put the flaps up in my go around. And so at that moment, I kid you not, I was probably 30-ish feet off the treetops and rooftops. It was horrifically terrifying. And I was trying to figure out what was going on so quickly that it's a Johnson bar for those flaps. So I took it and I pushed it and I dropped it to the floor immediately. And I know that I shouldn't have done that. Thankfully, we lost 0 altitude and we started increasing in airspeed. And we started climbing away from the ground very, very slowly. Gosh. Going back through some of this in my head, it is kind of traumatizing a little. Anyways, it was at that moment that over the radio, I hear a guy who was at the other end of the runway who was going to depart after me ask if I was okay. And I remember saying, yes, we're finally climbing. So we climbed and got to a good, safe altitude where I was comfortable. My kids were silent during this whole thing, and I don't know if they even noticed what was going on. Talking with them afterwards, they're like, yeah, we're close to the ground, no big deal. I told the kids, hey, we're gonna go back home. That landing didn't go properly. I'm frazzled, and it's not good for us to go back right now. And they were disappointed, but I told them I'd get them IHOP, and so there was cheers inside of the airplane. And we flew to Phoenix. I had a greaser of a landing, and I took the kids to IHOP. You know, in retrospect to all of this, it was not fun to go through. I can see when pilots are going and these situations are developing, that you make mistakes, you do things wrong, you're just trying to figure out, there's panic, and I know that you just need to stay cool, you need to figure it out. Thankfully, I was able to figure it out, and me and my 3 kids are still here today. But I think the most traumatizing part about it to me, 2 things stand out, is looking at that ground and trying to figure out where I was going to land. And if I had to turn to my kids and say, hey guys, sorry. Tell them I'm sorry, but we're going to be crashing the plane. I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that. I'm glad that I didn't have to go through that. That's part of the experience. That I'm here today with my kids, my family, and a learning experience for me. I spent a lot of time talking with my friends who are instructors, and I knew I had my flight review coming up soon, and my instructor buddy was like, guess what I'm hammering you on? But yeah. So going back to why this all happened, I want to say it might be a level of complacency. I did a checkout flight inside of the airplane, but it never occurred to me to practice a go around. And retrospect, I was doing flows like I was in a 172, which I'm much more familiar with. And every time I checked the flap position, I looked right through the bar and where the flaps would be in the 172. And so that was my mistake. So I wish that I had done some go-arounds, that I had briefed a go-around. If I had just briefed a potential go-around because of the airport and what's going on and made that a process of when I come into land every single time, then that wouldn't have been an issue. I would have known that I need to put my flaps down because I'd already thought through it. I would have looked at my flaps, I would have touched them and known, hey, this is what I need to do. So I encourage you guys all to don't get complacent. Practice go-arounds. Practice things that you aren't proficient at, because there might be a time that you have to execute that and you're not prepared and you make a mistake. And you may not be as lucky or as blessed as I was and my family was to be able to get out of it alive. I hope some of you guys find this useful. Sorry for crying a little bit there. It is still just thinking about the emotion and the trauma that was there from it. It took me a while to get over. I wanted to get back in the plane that afternoon and fly back to Payson and just show that runway that I can do go-arounds. I didn't, but I did, I was flying in the next couple of weeks. I continued to fly. My wife wasn't afraid to get back in the airplane with me. My kids weren't afraid to get back in the airplane with me. And aviation is a passion for me. I love it. I love it a lot. And so, again, I hope you guys learned something from my mistakes and put this inside of your mental checklist of things to do. That's going to be it today. So, as always, share aviation wherever you can, and we'll see you in the next one.